Good afternoon, y'all. Thanks for joining me here in my kitchen. Today I am kind of having a little bit of a baking day. The kids actually are all gone except for Amos. My kiddos stay tonight at their Nana's, or are staying the night. And Joel and I were planning to go out for dinner tonight. So it was kind of a fun night. But anyways, I was doing some baking on this quiet afternoon. Right now, I always do, so this is sourdough. You can see my sourdough starter right there on the island. I always do 2/3 worth of freshly milled flour and 1/3 of white flour. But unfortunately, you can see I'm having a lot of problems with my mill, and I just could not get it to go. It kept jamming up. We're not fully sure what's going on with it. It could be our power source. It might be a little bit too much. I'm not 100% sure, so I need to call the company and be like, hey, this is what's going on. I know this is an awesome mill, but I'm having issues with it. So I scratched that plan of doing my freshly milled flour in my sourdough loaves and just went 100% unbleached white flour. So it's still homemade bread, and that's what matters, right? But anyways, it's actually way easier to work with white flour. It's a good beginner flour that you'd want to work with. I feel like freshly milled flour is a little more difficult to work with. You're not going to get as nice of a loaf at the end, especially from what we're like accustomed to, store-bought bread kind of thing. So it was definitely an adjustment, but now we love it, and actually we like it even more with the freshly milled flour rather than the white flour, because there's just so much more flavor in the freshly milled flour loaves. But anyways, so I am measuring out my flour right now, and I do it by the scale. So I do this recipe. I try to do this every week. It makes 6 loaves, and so I do 1,500 grams in flour. And like I said, usually 2/3 of that is freshly milled flour, 1/3 is the unbleached all-purpose flour. So that is what I'm measuring out right now. Also, with the 1,500 grams, that's in each bowl. So it's 1,500 grams of flour in each of those bowls. I am tripling the batch, but I'm like doing a batch and a half in each bowl is how I always work it. So now I am doing my starter, and you always want to do fresh, active starter. So I fed my starter this morning. I had fed it that morning, and so now it is active and bubbly and strong. And so I am going to do 300 grams of active starter in each bowl. Now, one thing you will see in a little bit, I actually did not have enough starter. I didn't do a big enough batch, which that like never happens. So I'm not really sure how I messed up this time, but I was like, you know what? I've got a bunch of discard in the fridge, sourdough discard. I am just going to add it in because I need something. So I did. I took from the fridge some old discard. Well, it's not old. It was actually the discard from that morning. Oh, and I was just showing you here. So I pretty much poured it all out. There was just a little bit left on the sides of the jar of my starter, and that's what I do every time. And then I just add more flour into it and mix it all up, and that's all you really need. So you don't need to save like 1/3 of a cup or 1/2 a cup worth, whatever. You just need at least your sides coated in the starter, and then you feed it and you mix it up real well, and it's good to go again. So anyways, this is the discard that I had in the fridge. I'm just giving it a little quick mix, and then I use that to do the rest of the amount that I needed. So, and I have cooked 2 loaves so far, and they have turned out just fine. So you can totally do it. And I've done it in a pinch where I just didn't have time to feed my sourdough starter, and I just took it. I always store mine in the fridge, and I just took it straight out of the fridge and worked with it immediately. So you can totally do that. It's just, you kind of want to do that after you've had a lot of success with sourdough baking, because it can be discouraging if you do have a flop. So it's nice to have that encouragement. And we are so used to our sourdough bread that even if one comes out a little bit flat or whatever, it doesn't bother us. We enjoy it, and it's got really good flavor, so we're happy with it. But either way, my loaves still rose nicely, and I didn't have any issues, so I was thankful for that. So if you have to, you can always do it in a pinch, because I'm the kind of person that's always forgetful and running behind on time, and so I'm like, I need to get these done now. I don't have time to wait to feed it and get it all active and all that again. So I have done that here and there, but usually the best way is to do active sourdough starter. You're going to get the best results in your loaves. So here I am adding my salt, and for my salt I do 35 grams of salt in each bowl. Okay, so now I am doing my water. So you want to use filtered water when you use your feed your sourdough starter, or when you're making loaves. You always want to use filtered water. So I do 1,000 grams of filtered water in each bowl. Now, my dough ended up turning out pretty wet and sticky this time around, and I think it was because I've kind of adjusted those measurements to my 2/3 worth of freshly milled flour in my loaves, and so I hadn't done it before with the 100% all-purpose flour. So they did turn out pretty wet and sticky. So they worked out fine. It was fine, but definitely I would have cut back on the water. I just kind of totally spaced that, like, I'm using different flour. Freshly milled flour requires definitely more water. It just absorbs a lot of it. So you definitely use a little more water. But anyways, it still worked out fine. But if you are to use this recipe, you would want to do less water if you're doing 100% all-purpose flour, because it definitely got very sticky. So I would say maybe start with 900 grams of water and then see how that goes. So you can always add in a little bit more, but yeah, maybe start with 900 grams. So now I am feeding my sourdough starter, and I'm just going to give it flour and water, and then actually I guess I already fed it, but anyways, and stir it up really well. A lot of people say you don't want to use anything metal when you're messing with your sourdough starter. I've never had any issue. In the very beginning I did use wooden spoons or spatulas and such, like years ago. And then I realized it really doesn't matter. So I stopped worrying about that, and now I just use whatever's handy. So anyways, I was trying to show you the consistency of my starter. It's hard to show, but it's kind of, you shoot for like pancake mix kind of consistency is what you kind of shoot for. So anyways, and then I freshly feed it and I stick it straight in my fridge, and then it'll be good to go for next week when I'm ready to start again. I will just pull my starter out of the fridge. I usually do it the night before I want to bake, and I will just let it sit out overnight, warm up. That next morning I will feed it, and by that afternoon it'll be ready and fully bubbly and active and ready to go. So now, because I feed it just before I put it in the fridge, I feed it well, it actually does, it will work away throughout the week in the fridge. Like, I just peeked on it this morning, and it's growing in the fridge, like getting all bubbly and active and looking really good. So that might be another reason why I have had success in the past using it right away straight out of the fridge, because I freshly feed it very well before I pop it in the fridge. So maybe that's been the case. I'm not sure, but it works really well for me. So now I am mixing it all together. I always use my hands for this. It's just way better because you're going to use your hands anyway. So just skip the spoon and go straight to the hands. Anyways. So yeah, you just want to get it all incorporated really well. And yes, I'm just mixing it all up. getting it all incorporated really well, and then I will let it sit for about 20 to 30 minutes. And you always want to cover it with a damp towel. Okay, so now I am moving on to tortillas. So I am trying to get in the habit of, I bake 6 loaves of bread almost every single week. Pretty faithful on that. So now I'm trying to incorporate tortillas on that day as well. So I just found this recipe online and I'm really pleased with it. So I did triple it because I wanted a good stockpile, which gave me 48 tortillas in the end, which was really nice. And I'm trying to remember if I can remember the measurements. I don't think I can remember the measurements, and I don't have my recipe with me right now, actually. So, what I'll do is I will put the recipe in the description below. I will, just write that out for you guys in the description below when I get my recipe. So when I have it on hand. Anyways, one thing I did adjust on this recipe was right there in my hands is clabber. I'm smelling it because I'm super obsessed with smelling it, and I've done clabber a lot of different times off and on over the years. And what clabber is all it is freshly milked milk, like raw milk. I mean, it doesn't have to be freshly milked, but you want it as fresh as possible. It's raw milk, and you just stick it on the counter and you just let it clabber. It'll kind of curdle. And so that once it turns into a curd, like curdles, that is called clabber. And I just recently learned that you can bake with clabber. Actually, baking powder comes from clabber. The brand Clabber Girl at, the basic brand of baking powder that you can get at Walmart or wherever you get it. It makes total sense. Clabber Girl. So it's coming from clabber. So I thought that was super, super cool, because I'm like, hey, anything I can replace with the things that we have on our farm is awesome. So I am playing around with replacing anything that calls for baking powder with my clabber. So I did do it in this recipe and it worked out great. One thing I found when I have done the replacement, when I've used clabber instead of baking powder, and what I do is I just totally scratch the baking powder in the recipe. I don't use it at all. And I, instead of if it calls for water or if it calls for milk, whatever the liquid it calls for, I just replace that with the clabber. That's how I work it. So for this recipe called for water, I replaced it with the clabber is what I did. So, and actually I didn't replace 100% with the clabber. It was half of it was clabber, the rest was water. So, but I wouldn't have cared if I had done it all clabber. It's just I didn't have enough clabber on hand to do it. But, so one thing I've found with the clabber when I use it, things turn out very heavy and almost kind of a sticky texture, almost like it's doughy, but it's not. So I haven't loved it in a lot of other things. I'm still working with it and playing around with it. But the tortillas, it was great because, tortillas are you want them kind of that, I don't know, not rubbery texture, but, very flexible and kind of doughy in a way, not really, but in a way. So I knew it would work well for the tortillas, and and it did. It worked great. I loved it. So anyways, now I have formed it all into a ball. It called for, let's see here, the recipe called for flour, water, salt, and baking powder, and oil. And so you can play around with all of those, but anyways, it's pretty basic and pretty simple to the point. So I just formed it all into a dough, and then you knead it for 1 to 2 minutes. And then you stick it in the bowl and let it rest for, or you don't have to stick it in the bowl, but anyways, then you let it rest for 10 minutes. And so that's what I did. So now I am doing another stretch and fold, and you just want to do this as much as you possibly can. You can do it every 10 minutes, you can do it every 20 minutes, you can do it every 40 minutes. It really doesn't matter. It's however your day is flowing, and you just want to get it in as many times as you can. So I would say a minimum of 6 times. And so that's what I'm doing. I had a moment and I'm doing my stretch and fold with both my bowls, and then I will move on to my next task. So here I am rolling out my tortillas, and key to tortillas is you want it as thin as possible, almost translucent, almost like you can see through them. So very thin, and you cook them on medium heat in a dry pan. Cast irons are amazing for this, and it does not take long. It really doesn't. The rolling out process is the longest process, but for me, when I know like this is a baking day, it works fine for me. And it's great because I balanced it in between doing my stretch and fold. So I did half of my tortillas, like I cut the dough in half, did half of them up, and then cooked them and all of that, blah, blah, blah. And then I took a break, did my stretch and fold, and then I did the next half. So it worked really well that way to fit in my stretch and folds as well. So yeah, and then once the pans are warm and it's going, it actually goes pretty quickly. Like I actually had a hard time keeping up with getting the tortillas on those pans by the time the next batch was done and ready to be pulled off. So yeah, it was definitely moving, and that was nice. And here we are, super, like, I mean, it's just got the consistency of a tortilla and everything. Like, turned out great, and they are delicious. Check these out. Like a tortilla. And they're actually super delicious. I've already eaten a couple. You know, normally tortillas are kind of like, they're just blah. You like the stuff that's inside of them, not really the tortilla itself. These are amazing. You can totally eat these by themselves. They're so good. And I'm excited because, so I triple batched that tortilla recipe and I got 48 tortillas out of it. So that's pretty good. I'll be stockpiled on tortillas for a little while. And it really didn't take that long, you know, about an hour. If you get a bunch of pans going, I have 3 going. It speeds it up because you can get more going. And cast iron pans work amazing for this. I don't know, I'm sure any pan would work just fine, but cast iron pans work really good. Don't put any oil in it or anything. You just turn it on a medium heat and then just let it go until it kind of puffs up and turns a nice golden brown, and you're done. Super yummy. I found also when you roll them out, use more flour because you have to get them so thin, like almost translucent. You have to get them super thin, that the more flour there is, the easier the process goes. So we're going to do a stretch and fold with the dough. So I'm just going to get my fingers wet And I'm just gonna tuck under the bowl, lift up on my dough, kind of fold it over, get my fingers wet again, pull it up, fold it over, tuck under, pull it up, fold it over, tuck under, fold it up, or pull it up, fold it over. So you do that about 4 times. I just turn my bowl every time, so you do that. So I would pull it up, fold it, turn, pull it up, fold it, turn, pull it up, fold it, you know, 4 times. Anyways, so that was one stretch and fold. I'm going to cover it. In about 20 minutes, I will do that again. The whole point of doing that is to get more air trapped into your bread, so you get these nice air bubbles, and it really makes your bread rise a lot better and just look so much more beautiful. So that is why I'm doing the stretch and folds, and I actually love it because kneading, my hand's a little bit messy just because those doughs are a little bit on the wet side. Sometimes temperature can really fluctuate a little bit with your bread making, and I don't care, they're fine. They're just a little bit stickier, but as I continue to stretch and fold, they will get firmer and not near as sticky. It'll get better and better. So my hands will come out clean by the end of it. But anyways, I do like stretch and folds because it's just way less mess. I never pull those out. I don't deal with flour, big mess, like my tortillas or anything. So easy. So that was one stretch and fold. You can do ideally at least 6, but you know what? I've had times where I just did not have time, and I did like 2, maybe 3 at the most. There was this one time I barely had any time, so I think I only did 1 or 2, and then I just turned them into my loaves and popped them in the fridge. So you can totally do that. They were fine. You're just going to get a nicer product in the end the more stretch and folds you do. Amos is enjoying his tortilla too, huh, Amos? Yeah, you haven't had it very long and you've already eaten half of it. You want more, baby? Is it yummy? Is that yummy? Yeah. Is it a good tortilla? Yeah. Mmm. Yummy. Okay, so my tortillas are all done. I'm all finished with that. Made 48, but probably ate about, between Amos and I, 4. So we've got about 44 that I'm going to store up in the, I'm actually going to tuck them in the freezer because they're quick and easy to thaw. So that, I don't know. So they're always stored up in the freezer. Tortillas are done. I have to wait for another 20 minutes till I can do another stretch and fold. I've only got a few left to do. So I am going to get going on my granola. And this time, this is a new recipe I just came across. It's actually a friend of mine's recipe. She actually has a YouTube channel. Her YouTube channel is White Pine Homestead, and her name is Helen. So she's super sweet. She's got wonderful videos on there too. And this granola recipe looked amazing on her channel, and so you should go hop on and check her out if you want the full recipe, the ingredients. It's called The Best Granola Ever. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get going on the granola. I will go ahead and link her video that has the full recipe of this granola recipe in the description below. So if you want to check her out and see the details to this recipe, click on that below. It's so good. It's so good. I'm so sad. It calls for dried fruit, and I have no dried fruit. None whatsoever. So, I'm so bummed because I thought I had cranberries, and I don't. Uh-oh, I'm about to lose the power. It's going to go dark on us pretty quick here. Generator must be dying. So here I am prepping some bottles of milk for some baby lambs that we actually have. We haven't shown you guys yet. I did show you our first set of lambs, but then we had a second set recently. And unfortunately, they were born in a very cold spell. Like, it got so cold that we knew they made it the first night. It was fine, but then the temperatures dropped really bad. And we knew they were not going to make it the second night. So we brought them in for the night, and I was really hoping the mom would take them back in the morning. Here they are. They're so cute. And Amos gets so excited. But anyways, I was hoping the mom would take them back in the morning, but she's a young mom, and she didn't. She would not take them back. She actually was headbutting them. So she rejected them. So these are now our bottle baby lambs, which the kids are loving, and even little Amos, as you can see, he loves it. But anyways, yeah, so that's what's going on there. Gentle, nice. Yeah, good boy. Be nice, gentle. Good boy. Yeah.